Pentagon puts 8,500 troops on heightened alert as U.S. weighs military action against Russia. Among the options presented to the president was to move troops and equipment from other parts of Europe into Poland, Romania, and other countries neighboring Ukraine. Biden says a Russian invasion of Ukraine would change the world. UK finally promises to contribute troops to NATO if Russia invades Ukraine. Mitch McConnell says Biden is moving in the right direction in his response to Russia's threats against Ukraine. Biden must have another option on the table. U.S. military equipment flown into Ukraine as UK urges NATO unity. And they're saying they're doing all this for a military offensive on Ukraine, which, like I said before, I think it's really an offensive on NATO. We're reaching out to a lot of people now, and I thank you guys for helping me share this around. People need to hear this. And once again, thank you. Follow me if you're not. America's moving a lot of shit towards Russia, guys. It's only a matter of time before this blows out for real. UK promises to contribute troops to NATO if Russia invades Ukraine. Then we have a warning from Biden saying that a Russian invasion of Ukraine would change the world. If you remember, they also said it would be a worldwide conflict. I'm not going to let this settle down that they're thinking about military action against Russia, because if this war breaks out, it's going to be horrible. State Department says no signs of Russia de-escalation towards Ukraine defends NATO unity. What are they unifying for? If there's no threat to Ukraine, if Ukraine came out and said that there's no threat to our country, what are you guys unifying for? This is a standoff between NATO and Russia, and people need to wake up and understand this. Race to beat China to recover $100 million U.S. F-35 stealth fighter from the bottom of the South China Sea after a crash landed on aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson. Fears secret technology from America's most advanced jet could fall into enemy hands. Here's more. Russian advanced force already in country. UK warns as U.S. troops post to deploy. Parts of a Russian military advanced force are already in Ukraine, a UK defense minister has warned. Western leaders warn Russia it will pay a high price if it invades Ukraine. They're even warning any attack by Russia would be tragic and futile. If Russia pursues this path, many Russian mothers' sons will not be coming home. What the hell does that mean? And this article also says that Russian forces are already in Ukraine, which is weird because if Russia was in Ukraine, then Ukraine would definitely be trying to put it out there, but they're saying nothing is happening. Russian experts lays out Putin's menu of options regarding Ukraine, warns U.S. vulnerability being tested. The U.S. is being tested, but they're also not backing down, and neither is Russia or China. They're not calling this the Cuban Missile Crisis 2 because tensions are low, guys. This is going to be a game changer, for real. NATO to Russia, you do not know what awaits you. 3 aircraft carriers in battle position, USS Harry Truman under NATO command. It's just getting crazy, guys. Washington moves its chess pieces on the chessboard by mobilizing naval forces in various parts of the world. So we can't travel to Russia, and they're also getting our diplomats out of China as they plan to evacuate the embassy. Russia's getting ready for war. They already have their nuclear forces put on alert. Russia's already in a state of war. Putin's mandate, Russia prepares to receive millions of Ukrainian refugees, National Guard and nuclear forces develop. Oh boy. Russian Navy trains with China considers ditching US dollar over sanctions threat. China's pissed by saying these tricks of the Americans before the Chinese New Year and games show the real intention. So they think this is over the Olympics. 40,000 NATO soldiers are on alert as 20 warships head to the Black Sea. The U.S. say it won't fight for Ukraine if Putin invades, but it could still get pulled into a conflict with Russia, experts warn. Well, yeah, this is personally between NATO and Russia. Experts say there's a low but real risk U.S. could be dragged into a conflict with Russia. It's the point that the experts are saying that there's a chance of war with Russia. So they're slowly bringing it out to you guys. Third air shipment of U.S. military aid lands in Kiev carrying Javelin missiles and tank killer missiles. Wow. Russia issues new warnings as U.S. steps up support for allies in Ukraine standoff. While Moscow held military drills and deployed more forces to its neighbor's frontier, the United States stepped up its efforts to support European allies and counter the Russian threats. And to be honest, it's getting very dangerous. It's the fact that Russia's sending 20 warships in response to NATO's provocations, and NATO is in the Black Sea. And that's where all these ships are headed. And our strike group could be in the South China Sea for 4 months. The UK and NATO allies consider the U.S. request to send more troops to Eastern Europe. Reinforcements sought for NATO's eastern flank as Russian forces mass on Ukrainian border. U.S. threatens Belarus with military move. Washington will be forced to react if Ukraine is invaded from Belarusian soil, says the U.S. State Department. People are saying they'll make a move on Belarus over Ukraine, but y'all are trying to say they won't step up to Russia over Ukraine? That would make absolutely no sense. Russia receives U.S. response to security proposal. Now, they told Russia not to go public about this. The fact that U.S. came out today and said Ukraine could still become a NATO member means that they pretty much said no. Russia unveils military plans for Cuba, Latin America. Putin has agreed on a new collaboration with Cuba, Venezuela. It's definitely about to go down. All three countries agreed to work together. Oh man, here we go. Russia rejects Biden's warning of severe actions if it invades Ukraine. Russia on Wednesday rejected the prospect of U.S. sanctions against Vladimir Putin, one of the several proposed responses if Russia invades Ukraine. Germany slips away from Western alliance. The Green Lobby got its way, and so did Russia. Ukraine pays the price. Nobody wanted to believe me until it started hitting your local news. Washington tells Russian ambassador he might have to leave. An ongoing diplomatic visa row between Moscow and the U.S. can only get worse, Russian ambassador believes. Remember, when our diplomats and ambassadors start to leave, that's when you know that shit's getting bad. Russia's military exercise in Belarus prepares for war. And it seems like the war zone in Ukraine is only getting worse by the day, as tensions get higher and higher. NATO rejects Russia's red line. The alliance rejects key Moscow demand to stop expansion into former Soviet territory, demands Russia withdraw instead. Told y'all that letter was a straight no. Russia threatened a military technical response for unmet demands. And I got a couple things coming out today. By the way, the F-35C Lightning II that fell into the South China Sea, there's been a leaked photo of it falling into the ocean. Russia says U.S. sponsor on Ukraine offers little optimism. The Kremlin spokeswoman says the U.S. rejection of Russia's main demands to resolve the crisis over Ukraine leaves little ground for optimism. The world holds its breath. Kremlin says there's not a lot of room for optimism after the U.S. ambassador hand-delivers letter dismissing Putin's security demands, as British troops teach Ukrainians how to use anti-tank weapons. The fear of war right now has went through the roof. UK considering sending hundreds more troops to Ukraine after U.S. request. The UK is considering sending hundreds more troops to Eastern Europe amid fears of Russian invasion of Ukraine. Now, this is the one I wanted to show you guys. They're not even going to wait for the talks. They're ready to act now.
Reports about Russia moving the Eiklander nuclear-capable missiles there into Cuba. And, of course, the situation going on in Europe, very alarming. NATO pushing strongly against Russia. Russia at the brink of war, not only with NATO in Europe, but directly here in the United States. I'm going to share some information with you. I was in a meeting this morning discussing this very topic. And of course, the situation, as we already know, has been developing even more so since this past weekend, going into this week. The tensions between Russia and the United States are at an all-time high. As it was said to me, if you put it on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being we're going to war immediately, we are at a 7. Report.
Bro, how do we have so many clueless Americans? This was all over the media just a couple of days ago, talking about Russia deploying nukes to Cuba and Venezuela. This was everywhere. How is people still in the dark? I'm like, whoa, how did they get nukes there? Because they said since the beginning of the month they was going to deploy nukes there. That was one of their military options. Weird thing is, they just sent out the world's largest nuclear torpedo, a city killer. Crazy part is, one of these can do some major damage to our East Coast with radioactive tsunamis. We are in a new era, guys. Countries ain't the same as they used to be. The United States ain't the same as we used to be. We got a lot of war hawks around these days that would love to test out these weapons. And they got bunkers for a reason. So just because it hasn't happened in the past don't mean it's going to be the same outcome this time. Cold War II is heating up. So the Boeing E-8C was circling the Black Sea today, weirdly. And as you can see, it did it many times. Not going to lie, it's kind of close to Crimea. People forget that Russia has the dead hand, which is a scary plan to respond after a U.S. nuclear attack. Even if we wiped out their government, they would still have a backup plan to wipe us out. Like I said, it's not going to be an easy war. But anyways, let's continue on. Pentagon says Russia buildup has increased in the last 24 hours near Ukraine. The Defense Department said that the buildup of Russian forces near Ukrainian border has increased in the last 24 hours. They're even saying that they're building up in Belarus too. F-35C fighter jet races on to reach sunken U.S. plane before China. I wonder if there'll be some consequences if China finds it first. The written responses presented by United States and NATO to Russia's security demands failed to address Moscow's concerns. Yeah, I know, and they said they've never threatened Ukraine. They've always threatened us. U.S. NATO using military moves to send a message to Russia over Ukraine. But how effective are they, given the small scale and some already planned? I want to show you guys a situation that happened today. U.S. urges China to influence Russia against Ukraine invasion. If there is a conflict in Ukraine, it is not going to be good for China either. Oh, you guys think China's going to be dragged into the war as well? Because we already know it's not over Ukraine, it's NATO versus Russia. But I'm going to get there. China comes back by siding with Russia's security concerns in the standoff with the U.S. and NATO over Ukraine. China is solidly in Russia's corner when it comes to military face-off between Moscow and the United States and NATO over Ukraine. They also warned the U.S. over the standoff with Russia. Regional security cannot be assured by expanding military blocs, according to Beijing's top diplomat. They're acting on all sides to get rid of the Cold War mentality. Germany also sided with China over Lithuania. What is going on? Crazy times. Biden threatens to attack Russia. NATO deploys troops. Ukraine in fear of war. Russia and Ukraine. This is going to be interesting. NATO and Russia locked in a high-risk standoff in the Mediterranean and Black Seas. As I said, it's getting very tense because Russia is sending troops, they're sending ships, and they're doing drills right next to each other. NATO is marking them as drills, so now Russia's marking them as drills. And they're all doing them worldwide. Like, it's getting very dangerous. Russia warns of NATO nuclear threat. The military bloc is training its members to unleash atomic hellfire, the foreign ministry claimed. NATO is developing the capacity for devastating nuclear strikes against Russia, which includes involving members of the alliance who don't have such weapons and training, Moscow's top arms control official has claimed. According to expert analysts, there are 5 non-nuclear NATO countries holding around 200 American B-61 nuclear bombs. They're saying that these missiles can reach Russia's strategic locations. Russia to the EU and US, the fire of war will be lit in Europe. And they're saying the world military situation is on the verge of disaster. The global military and political situation has reached a very dangerous point, warns the Russian deputy foreign minister. The global military situation on the brink of disaster. The military and political situation in Europe and the world has reached a dangerous point. Guys, this shit is real. It's getting dangerous. I keep saying it's between Russia and NATO, not Ukraine. Not Ukraine. Ukraine was the distraction. I mean, look at this shit. Russian nuclear submarines already on duty off U.S. coast. Russia and NATO didn't come to an agreement, guys. Russia and Ukraine might have had one, but the U.S. and NATO is beefing hard with Russia right now. And now we got China too. The U.S. is doing training drills with their most powerful nukes, guys. Wake up, for real.
Area could hear, feel, and see. Now the investigation has started on what caused the explosion, injuring 6 people. News 10's Elise Corville has been covering this story all day. She joins us now live with what she has learned since. Elise.
Hey, Darla, the explosion happened just before 11 o'clock this morning. Now, that caused nearby schools to go under precautionary stay in place just in case of possible toxic fumes in the area. Westlake Chemical Plant Company spokesman Joe Andropont says chemical fumes in a storage tank at Westlake Chemical South plant ignited, injuring 6.
And this plant is located between Interstate I-10 and 210. Where the fire explosion occurred was what we reference as our